It's here.
Now we can record it.
See, I earned all,
Hey, everybody,
Hey, Brian.
how we doing?
earned all the
Yeah.
points for starting, actually doing anything.
This is so exciting. I know. Hi. You tried some. Yes. Right, sir.
Right on in camera. Part of stealth mode.
Okay, I call this, in-person meeting of the Transportation Board of Town of Brookline to order. It's great to be here in person. I think this is our first in-person meeting ever as a board, and after 3 years almost, so. Thank you all for coming tonight. Thanks all, everybody over there for organizing it. It's great to see everybody in person. No dog sightings tonight, unfortunately, Chanel, but
Nope.
we'll have to make do without, so. Okay,
I think I saw Rocky on the street yesterday, though.
probably did.
Passed you in the morning.
Oh, wow. He gets more notices than I do most times, that's for sure, so. Okay, we'll start with, public comment for issues not on the agenda. If any of the three of you would like to make a public comment for items not on the agenda or anybody online, this is the time to do it. If you wish to comment on an item on the agenda, we will have ample opportunity to do that on each agenda item. Right. Does anybody want to make a public comment at this time? How do we do the online public?
So
comments?
there are currently 6 attendees and there are no raised hands.
Okay. Cool. All right, so we will assume that there is no public comment period or public comments at this time. And we'll move on to item 3, which is the consent agenda. The only item on that is the approval of the April 24th, 2024 meeting minutes. Is there a motion with respect to the consent agenda?
So
Second?
Second.
Thank you. Why don't we start down with you, Wendy? Yes, no?
Yes.
Len?
yes,
I'm a yes.
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 It's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, member update. Anybody got an update? Well, I'll jump at once. Congratulations on your reelection
Thank
to town meeting, or condolences, as the case may be.
3 more years.
It's like a prison sentence. Just keep counting the days now. It's good. I'm glad you're doing it, and thank you for doing it as well. I wouldn't do it for all the team done ever again.
I won't say anytime, but
Ever again. Anybody have any announcements, items? I attended the pedestrian meeting with you the other day. I didn't get to stay to the end, but it seemed very interesting. They have some red light camera, issues to talk to us about at our next meeting, which is gonna be interesting.
Yeah, I think part of what is worth maybe us thinking about at some point is they always have, over the past several years, they've gotten like tons of different reports and things, and giving some time on the agenda at some point for David to sort of review those with the whole board might not be a bad move.
Yeah, I agree. And, we'll try to get that definitely in June.
Also, I think there's a Washington Street meeting coming up next week.
May 22nd.
Yep.
For the red light cameras, David did send a memo.
Yeah.
And I just don't remember who we copied on it to the board.
Yeah, I think he realized recently that a lot of times I'll send it to just like 1 or 2 of us, as he should with the. But then, yeah, some mechanism, we had talked a long time ago, I guess, about how to, do the liaison and subcommittee things properly. And do we have any processes for filtering information back to the board?
Right.
On that topic, have there been any developments in terms of state law, in terms of allowing these cameras?
Not that I know.
Okay,
I don't think there will be the session. It's all theoretical,
okay.
but we do good in theory here at Brookline. We dwell in theory. No, Somerville is doing an interesting, legal camera pilot for parking in bus stops and in bus lanes and delivery drivers sort of pulling up with their hazard lights. And that's been fascinating. That's something we can certainly consider. That is allowable. But whatever else isn't allowed, I don't think you can still send traffic tickets through the mail in Brookline.
I think
There.
New York City had to go through the state legislature to get a pilot granted to them, and if they don't get reapproval, it'll be done at the end of the year.
Yeah.
But I did see a lot of data that they've reported in terms of, decreasing incidents.
Are you talking about the bus cameras? Or-
Sorry, I'm talking about back to red light cameras in New York City and what they've been able to accomplish there.
Speaking of that, didn't they also just institute or about to institute a $15?
Oh, like surge pricing or whatever it's called.
Yeah, like
Congestion
congestion
pricing.
pricing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know how that's gonna work. Interesting.
Okay,
Off topic.
we will, I'll consider that member update. Close. Cool. DPW update, Dan.
Hi, you've got the memo in here, there's a bunch of, there's a couple new, one new one at least.
Thanks.
So I'll just point out a couple, and you already mentioned the DRC, which is next Wednesday. That's all on the town calendar, so you can sign up to join on the Zoom and join that meeting. The second one is the Vision Zero meeting a week from Wednesday, next on the 29th. Again, that's a Zoom meeting as well, 5 o'clock. So 5:29, Vision Zero meeting, it's a kind of the first update meeting. Excited about that. Third thing, I guess I'll submit this crack ceiling contract as well. There's a list at the very last item in the packet. There's a list of streets, so that'll be happening soon. And then the fourth one is the bonded wearing course. We're getting close to be issuing that package. That's on Hammond Street, on Beacon Street from Washington to Cleveland Circle. And Pond Street, if we have enough money for an alternate or extra doing. But those are kind of four things I'll point out here. If you have any questions, I'll try to answer them, but there's other folks here. I'm fairly new, so I'm good help here.
We are so glad you're still here, Dan. Thank you for being here.
I would add about the Vision Zero meeting that that we will have our consultants at that meeting. So it will be the first one that the project team will present to the group. And we're gonna go through the crash analysis that they've done in terms of reviewing all the data within Brookline for the history of crashes and identifying high injury networks in Brookline. And so I think it will be a really first time we've gotten data back after their work. So it will be quick. It's just 1 hour, hard cutoff at 6. So we'll be working with the project team on the 29th, like Dan said.
Awesome. Thanks. Yes.
Question on Washington Street with the National Grid work.
The never ending.
Yes. Are they preparing at any point to do any repavement on that road?
Yeah, there are negotiations about maybe doing a bottom wearing surface to restore the patching. And if not, they do permanent patch. Right now, it's that there's a temporary patch that's going to settle.
Is it expected that that will occur in 2024?
Yes.
Promise.
That's rough.
It is.
I mean, I remember what it looked like before it was repaved. And I'm not sure if it's worse, but it certainly isn't much better right now.
Right. Okay, thanks, Dan.
All right. Well,
Item 6, discussion and action on a request, David J. Jensen, trustee of the Platform 9 3/4 Trust, which is the best name trust ever.
Sorry,
I'm just naming it, and I'm gonna say we're not doing that. Temporary accessible parking permit at 10 Beach Road. We are not gonna take this item up tonight. Both parties have asked this to be postponed. And I really just wanted to say platform. Because it's impossible. Okay, item 7, discussion and action on a request to remove the designated curbside accessible parking space at 9 Hart Street. Yeah, you can do that. Who's got this one? Sam, Dan?
I'll take this one. This came in through a resident request from neighbors. The person that was using the handicap spot had passed away. And they reported that the current residents no longer have a handicap placard, it expired. And they were asking if we could take it out if it's not in use, and staff did observations and found no one's parking at the handicap parking space. If the residents do wish to use handicap, they need a handicap parking spot again, they have to reapply. I think that makes sense since it's different users this time.
I should know this. Where is Hart Street?
It's right off Cypress,
In the
near like
playground.
Rice
South of
Street.
Brookline, South of Brookline.
Oh,
What's that playground, not Murphy? Robinson Playground, right next to Robinson Playground.
okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions? Any comments from the public online in the gallery?
I'm checking. We have one raised hand. I will promote, or I will allow Ann Lusk to speak.
I already did, so it's.
Hi, Ann Lusk here. I had sent a letter with some of the history. In 2000, then Charlie Farrell, who was a highly respected Brookline fireman, had diabetes and he was in a wheelchair. He was bedridden and he had to be taken for dialysis often by his wife. So they had applied for the curbside, then it was called disabled parking space. And then he died in 2003. And after that, then Jean Farrell, his wife, was able to get a regular handicap placard from the state of Massachusetts. And she used that handicap space for the next 20 years. I know in Brookline, the policy is if you have a dedicated accessible handicap parking space in front of your house, you can continue to use it with just the state issued handicap placard. But Boston has a policy in which every 2 years, the homeowner has to reapply. So in looking at this proposal, it's an opportunity for Brookline to look at the policy. And in this case, a dedicated handicap space has been used for 23 years. And it's a very small street, lots of little houses, no parking beside the houses. And it's been a hardship to not have that additional space, especially because a space in one location then means that the fewer cars can parallel park and be fluid moving up and down. So in addition to the good suggestion, which is that if Jean Farrell's granddaughter wants to reapply, she can fill out the Brookline application for an accessible curbside parking space. But going forward, the Transportation Board might want to look at its policy and see if it wants to have something more similar to Boston, in which a homeowner has to reapply every 2 years. Because obviously as local residents, we didn't want to be unkind to Jean Farrell and say, Jean, you got to go back and reapply for this. So it's an option that the town of Brookline has. And I thank you for considering the current decision, which would be to let them reapply if they want to have that curbside accessible space, continue for them. But take it out for now.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Lusk. Anybody have any questions for the petitioner? Okay, anybody else online, Dan?
No one
Sam?
else.
Excuse me?
No hands are raised. 8 attendees.
So, there is an interesting point that's been raised that we should probably talk about, which is the expiration of these parking spots at some point. I'm not sure 2 years is the right amount of time, but I do think we should put some kind of a time band on it. That does put more pressure on the staff, however, and I know you guys are very busy. So, have we ever considered anything like that before? Does anyone remember?
I don't think so, but I think good system might be if we want them to acknowledge they still need it, maybe at staff level, so T-Board could approve it and then on contingent staff review every 2 years.
Yeah, an email or something saying, yeah, we're still using it, would be helpful. I mean, what do you, any thoughts on that?
In a simple renewal style is much better than application.
Yeah.
I don't feel like it's fair to the petitioner to have them go over the reasons why they need an accessible spot every 2 years.
Oh, I agree. I think it's more just making sure that they haven't moved.
Yeah.
You know, if it was a temporary injury, maybe they don't need it. Sure. But yeah, I completely agree. I think a renewal would be helpful.
Yeah, we do a lot of other renewals online or parking stickers and dog licenses.
Right.
Another one.
So, I think you're hearing pretty strong support for that on this side of the table. Maybe you guys can think about that, and go back to us with some kind of concept. And again, it doesn't have to be very formal. let's do some kind of a opt-in as opposed to an automatic. Right, sure.
That makes sense.
Yeah, who knows how many spots like this are just floating around out there that we.
Absolutely. No, we definitely want to be supportive of folks that need it, but we also hear a lot that people want to put their cars places, so we should definitely follow up on that. So that, thank you. Okay, getting back to Hart Street. So the recommendation is that we vote to alter the traffic. Sorry, Sam, does anybody else want to say anything?
No, we're good. Thank you.
To alter the traffic rules and regulations to remove the existing curbside handicap parking space in front of 9 Hart Street and return it to the normal 2-hour parking regulation. There a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Is there a second? Awesome. Wendy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
I'm a yes.
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 Do you need me to call him? John.
Like the.
No, it's unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Lusk. We appreciate you taking the time and bringing this to our attention. I'm looking at a TV screen. I know you're not there, but I'm sticking to the TV screen. It seemed like the right thing to do. I don't know where the camera is. That's where I should be. All right, time check, 6:48, and we are 2 minutes.
We were in gallery. New business.
No, I don't think they can bring captures, but.
Oh,
Oh, well, I would.
Let's talk about the select board email retention policy. So I'm gonna take the chair's prerogative and go to item 12, which is other business. A, which is the select board email retention policy. This came up recently where they're now asking for us to do a launch. Okay, I don't think we have it, so see if I have it in my email. That would be ironic if I didn't retain any. Let's see.
Unretained.
Do we have anything on this, Sam or Dan?
Yeah, I can share the screen. I just provided or electronically provided the draft language from Town Administrator Charles Carey.
Yeah.
Let me see if I can share my screen and it will be large enough for everyone to see.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So share. Oh, it's kind of big.
Good.
So, draft language presented by, Town Administrator Charles Carey, highlights the importance of transparency when it comes to communication, for boards and commissions that are appointed by the select board. Administrator Carey points out the, financial, burden that would fall on the town if we were to give email addresses with brooklinema.gov end names to every person appointed by the select board. So the current recommendation from Administrator Carey is to create a universal email address that would be boardarchives@brooklinema.gov that would be CC'd on all communications with board and committee members appointed by the select board. This would provide, a history for when we get requests, whether they're FOIAs or others, for information pertaining to communications between board members. After those board members have cycled off of a board and we have to reach out to you individually and say, can you please provide the email communication? So if this draft policy does get voted on and adopted by the select board, we would establish a constant CC or a consistent CC with this email address that would represent as an archive for all communication. Outside of that,
Great. Another email to check.
Yep.
We all eat. So the question that came up from David Trevette, which is a good one, is does that also apply to our advisory committees? We know?
I don't know the answer to that, but because they're not appointed by the select board, my assumption would be that their communication amongst themselves would not be, but if they choose to, send an email that, does correspond with any member of this board, for example, that email would be a part of the requirement for carbon copy.
So are we expected to be responsible for messages that we receive as well? Is that what you're suggesting?
I'm suggesting that if the conversation that's taking place with the individual who reaches out to you, that if you respond to them, it would be
Okay.
including that CC of the board.
So there's nothing really we have to do other than anytime we're emailing anybody about anything, copy that email address.
Right, and you have to use a new Brookline email address.
Is that true?
No, we would not be providing.
Oh, you would not be
This is
providing,
the-
oh, I
You're
thought
using
you
your
were
own
providing.
email.
This is
No.
this is the workaround.
Sorry,
that-
you don't have to add a new email address.
Can I ask a question? Is there a reason not to have just the board be a listserv, like the Safe Routes to School Committee, or so that we're just writing to that rather than CCing the whole board every time there's a message?
But
And then,
Oh, it's not CCing the whole board necessarily, it's CCing this. One staff member from town will be overseeing this one email
but I
inbox.
mean, you only need that when the whole board is on the email, right?
No, it just whenever you're having a conversation with someone about a topic that is relevant to the transportation board business. So like if you're discussing Park Street, for example, and those communications between you and the board, or you and say a resident reached out to you directly about it,
Mhm.
your response should CC this email address, so there's a record of that communication between a select board appointed board or commission member and a resident or
Oh, okay, I thought the record only applied if it was like forum, like open meeting. Okay, I get it.
No, I think it's all communication between select board appointed members and that board or outside parties, so. David Trevette, just FYI, has raised his hand too.
By all means, let us hear from David. The voice from above.
Hello, David Trevette, Chair of the Pedestrian Advisory Committee, but speaking for myself, I hope you can hear me.
Yep.
I already sent a note to a generic email address, transportation at bookonma.gov, about the fact that it's actually somewhat hard to, when you're attending via Zoom, a hybrid meeting, it's sort of hard to follow along. You can't always see a picture of who's speaking. Some of the pictures are out of focus, and I can't always hear everything that says. So sorry if what I'm about to say is redundant with what's already been said. The key point here is the concern about people who do not have brooklinema.gov addresses. So to the extent that there's conversation to staff, the question is who owns the emails? So conversation with staff who do have transportation, who do have brooklinema.gov addresses, in a sense that's covered. The town has a record of those emails, those conversations. What I pointed out earlier today is that, okay, so I submit things on behalf of the committee to the transportation board. I usually send that to Brian. I usually CC staff. In a sense, staff is covered. Brian doesn't always necessarily know that. It would say that Brian has the obligation to forward this thing to the archive. Maybe it's not clear. If multiple people are on the email and one is a brooklinema.gov address, is that good enough? The other is whether a member of the public writes directly to Brian on a matter wanting to bring it to the board and does not copy a staff member or someone with a brooklinema.gov address, then that sounds like it's Brian's job to forward that email to the archive email. That's what this draft policy seems to say. One of my questions that I asked in email earlier today, I don't think if I got an answer, I haven't seen it yet, was okay, maybe I should start using that transportation at brooklinema.gov generic address whenever I submit things from the pedestrian advisory committee, which is not covered by this policy because it's not appointed by the select board. But when I communicate to the transportation board, which is covered by the policy. So there are a lot of wrinkles to that. And the other interesting thing about the select board discussion at the select board meeting last night is that even though the policy is really about emails, oddly enough, the conversation and exchanges quickly devolved in discussion of documents. And it was not clear that everybody was on the same page about what they were talking about. So it'll be interesting to see how this goes forward. So I just wanted to say the devil is in the details here, and it's worth working those details out. Thank you.
Thanks, David. You're right, as always. This will be fun. When does this take effect? Does anyone know?
It's just draft. It hasn't actually been done. I don't know if it was discussed at last night's select board meeting or not.
Yeah. Excuse me. I attended that meeting. So what the point was that Charles Carey wanted to bring it to the board to see if there was enough support, so there was time for him to start talking. In other words, if it was enough sense that this is a good thing to do, that then he would start contacting all the boards and commissions and getting a feedback, or at least all the major boards and commissions. And again, the ones we're talking about non-elected things. So I expect there to be some reach out very shortly from Carey to the various boards, and then presumably you'll bring it back for a meeting. But it's good to be alerted in advance, so you sort of start thinking about what the options may be. And again, use of generic addresses can solve a lot of problems if they can automatically either be on a brookline.ma.gov address, or can automatically CC or do an automatic forward to the archive address. Thank you.
That's very helpful, David. Thanks for bringing this to our attention. So I guess we'll just have to wait and hear what the select board wants us to do, and then apply. Maybe we'll have to get new Gmail accounts or something. But, okay. I just wanted everyone to be aware of that in case gets thrown on us. Anybody have any questions, comments, concerns? I love email, by the way. Okay. Great. Well, thank you, David. Thank you, Sam. We'll move back to our regularly scheduled agenda items. We are now at item 8, discussion and action on the request by the Brookline School Department to reactivate the old Lincoln School staff on-street permit parking plan for the 2024 to 2028 school years. Dan Martin.
Karen King was gonna join us. She might remotely. She probably just had a little head schedule. But I think most of us, the school department is requesting to use Old Lincoln School, and their staff will be moving in. They're anticipating 71 staff members and 65 will need on-street parking, and so they're asking to reactivate the Pierce old Lincoln parking program. It's been in use for decades. It's 74 permits throughout the neighborhood. Includes Boylston Street, Irving Street, Maple Street, Upland Road, Cameron Street, Leverett Street, Smith Street, Walnut Street. There is a count of the capacity of the road and how many permits are issuing. All the streets are roughly about 40% occupied with the permits, which fits our regulation, but we're allowed to do 40% of current parking on the street for commercial paint tags. So to follow that same logic here, the teacher permits would take up roughly 40%. If there is any particular issue with a particular permit, because they have a little bit of slack, the school team could move teachers around to different streets to address any complaints of getting And then I think it's 4 years they're requesting.
Thank King's here for putting her.
24.
Great. And then Carrie King is joining. If you have any questions for her, or if you wanna,
Yeah, let's hear from the school department. Please.
Hi Karen, can you hear us?
Oh, yes, sorry. Was there a question, Dan? I'm sorry, I might have missed it while
Oh.
I was moving over from a panelist.
oh, sure, I introduced the item and I went over the current parking in the neighborhood. And we're just hoping to hear any additional comments about the request that you provided.
No, as our request states, we're just looking for teacher parking in the area of Old Lincoln for the K-5 teachers that will be teaching at that building during the 3.5, hopefully, term of the project.
Okay. Thank you, Karen. Appreciate it. Anybody have any questions for the staff before we start hearing from the public? Or the school department? Yes, Jonathan.
Dan, I thought you said, you say a number less than 74? That they needed?
Yeah, I thought you said they need 60 something.
They're anticipating 65 parking permits used on average. That's the anticipated demand. And there'll be a little slack in the permit program, so they can move parkers around.
So 74 is more for the ability to move from one street to another because the 74 encompasses all the streets.
Yep.
Okay.
74 is the total potential permits they could use. They don't plan to use all.
And I just had a question. I thought I remembered when we were talking about the parking garage a few meetings ago that there was parking for 60 something. I was just are there permit parking now in addition to the garage?
Yep, the Pierce school here has, I think, 60 on-street permits that are issued throughout the neighborhood. And they're gonna be giving those permits to town hall to use while they're over at Old Lincoln and also at Newbury College on Fisher. That location there.
Yeah, school splitting is being paid.
Right, I knew that. That's why I was just surprised by the number. But my other question is just why I know that there's been a lot of emails from the Walnut Street residents, and I was wondering why Cypress, which is much more commercial, isn't included.
We could allocate permits to Cypress. It's getting kind of further from the school, so it's definitely a longer walk than any of the other current streets.
But still
And-
pretty close.
And it does bump it up to other programs, so the new Lincoln School does have permits on there.
Mhm. I guess I just wonder if that should be considered if we're gonna get a lot of, I imagine we're about to get a lot of permits, but.
And,
Please, please, Janelle.
I'm about to ask this for, are there timing restrictions on these? Like, are these like available on weekends to people too, or there's no? I just imagine that weekends and evenings are gonna be a harder time for people who have people coming that need street spaces. I'm curious.
There's no time restriction on the permit itself, but I don't think many people are trying to park in Old Lincoln when they're not working.
Right.
If there were concerns like that, the school does keep track of who's doing the permits, and they could ask the why they're using them off hours.
Yeah, sure.
So as a follow-up for the parking for the upper grades on Fisher Hill, will they need a program at some point, or is there enough parking there to?
Karen might be able to get more info on that.
So there are enough parking spaces within the lot that's on the Newbury College Fisher Hill site to accommodate all the teachers that will be there at that site.
Great.
Okay. Let's turn to public comment. I assume that's why you all are here. We'll start with the good folks in the room and then we'll go to online. So feel free to order yourselves whoever you'd like to, and we'd be delighted to hear from you.
I guess
Just state your name,
start?
please, just so we have it for the record.
My name is Barbara Hebert, and I've lived in the Pierce School neighborhood for many years. And I'm a co-sponsor of the petition to reverse the curb cut decision and restore the 3 parking spaces on Harvard Street. Thank you for the opportunity to talk with you about this issue. Carol McVeigh, the other
No, sorry,
Oh,
we're
sorry.
talking about, this is just for the parking permit program for.
Sorry, yeah.
Oh, the
Old
parking.
Lincoln School.
I wasn't clear.
I'm so sorry.
No, no worries.
Uh,
We'd love to hear from you later on that one.
Okay.
We're talking about, yeah, the Old Lincoln School permit right now.
Is anyone in the room here to talk about the old Lincoln School permit parking program? No.
No?
We have 12 attendees and there
Okay.
are currently no hands raised for discussion of the.
Yeah, surprised by that. Okay.
Okay, we have one. Ted Burns. Ted,
Okay.
Ted, I'm just gonna allow you to talk.
Great. We've gotten a lot of email about this topic, so I thought we'd have.
Okay, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. Good evening, everyone. I suspect there may have been some other folks who wanted to join to comment on this, but I think this item was listed to be expected around 7:20 p.m. So you may have some other folks joining. I live at the corner of Irving Street and Upland Street. I've lived there for 8 years. And in that time, I think this program was only in operation once for a relatively short period. And in that part of our neighborhood, it proved to be enormously challenging. So the area around Philbrook Green on most business days ended up being fully parked up, like fully. So there was no parking for visitors or tradesmen, as was Irving Street all the way up and down the street. And when we inquired about it, we were generally told, well, this is only a temporary program, so don't worry about it. And, there was no enforcement of any kind to ensure that there was parking left over for the residents of the neighborhood. So I want to be, and I think our whole neighborhood, I suspect, wants to be very, very supportive of our school department staff. But we'd just like to ask the board if there aren't ways to somehow mitigate this impact on the neighborhood, or to ensure that the parking is spread out around the neighborhood, so that, when someone's coming to, a tradesman's coming to the neighborhood to work and so on, folks are wanting to have guests, that, we're not finding that teachers are choosing to, use this as free parking when they want to go out in Brookline on the weekends. I don't know why this happened, but our experience of this program, at least the one time I experienced it, did prove to be very challenging and quite intensive on the impact on the neighborhood for that short period of time. So if there are ways to consider that, I know the numbers say, oh, this is only 44% of the parking spaces. That wasn't our experience at all. Certainly around Philbrook Green, it was like 90%, 100%. Up and down Irving Street, it was the same, 90%, 100%. I'm not sure how that happened, but that was the reality of what we experienced during this program. So we want to be supportive, of course, but something about how this was implemented proved to be very impactful.
Well, Ted, thank you very much. And we also have your email here. Thank you for that. And thank you for coming tonight. And yeah, we'll definitely, I have some thoughts on what you had to say, but do we have anybody else in the online to talk about Walnut Street or Old Lincoln School parking?
One more individual has raised their hand, I will allow them to talk. Great. Please unmute yourself, thank you.
Hi, do you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, my name is Narcissa Campion, and for more than 40 years, I've lived at 255 Walnut Street. So I have experienced many iterations of there being parking allowed to accommodate what has gone on, or was how the Old Lincoln School was used. And to the previous speaker, I think Ted, I would just say that my experience is that it completely consumed the neighborhood. It took up all and multiple times. The parking with the orange placards would fill up Franklin Street and Oakland Street, all of Walnut. And I'll just say, as opposed to previous decades, there is less parking available now on Walnut as there was before the traffic calming and the street got widened and then got narrowed and then got widened. So the other thing is, I don't know if any of you on the board live in this neighborhood, but Walnut Street, as you know, is heavily trafficked, particularly in the morning. And I have friends and family that live on this street. What happens is that people who are coming to park on Walnut, they drive into residential driveways, and then they have to back up to turn around, or they stop the traffic in order to parallel park, or it causes havoc on what is already a overburdened street, particularly in the morning when people will be coming to the school. As I said in the email I sent, it's hard not to think that there might be some way of mitigating this by using Route 9. I think that is a state road, but it's commercial space. This is a neighborhood. This is not a commercial space. And between Herb Chambers and U-Haul, which use it all day long to access the eastbound side of Route 9, we are burdened beyond what seems reasonable to me. And now for 4 years to take away the ability to park in our neighborhood during the day seems an undue burden on this neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We also have your email. I appreciate you taking the time to reach out to us. Let me just note that we received messages from Ms. Campion and Emily Jacobson, Mr. Burke, who we just heard from, Alexis Winterstein, and Hillary Maddox on this topic. So thank you. We do look at all of those.
Right.
Anybody else online?
Ted Burke has raised his hand.
All right, Mr. Burke. We don't usually let you have 2 bites of the apple, but you need to help us out here.
Thank you. My apologies. I just wanted to add to the previous speaker's point about traffic on Walnut Street. We're about to experience the new bus lane, which is going to dump a huge amount of additional traffic onto Walnut Street in all likelihood, the new bus lane on Route 9. So this is a neighborhood that is already about to be under a lot of pressure. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you again for your consideration.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn back to, sorry, Sam, anybody else raising their hand?
No.
Okay.
You're all set.
Okay.
17 attendees, no, other than Ted, no raised hands.
Okay. So I just want to turn back to staff for a second. So I think Wendy asked a very good question, which is there a way that we can, I know this is sort of what we've always done before, is there a way to spread it around a little bit more? And I'm looking here and the first thing that comes to my mind is there's a hotel garage across the street. Is there any chance we could talk to those folks about using that space? And then I'm looking at some other streets and I'm wondering if there's ways to spread it around. I don't know this neighborhood as well as I know others, but I know there are some other streets that we could possibly look at, so.
Yeah, I'll tag on to that, Wendy and I know this neighborhood intimately well. And I had asked to go back and do some counts on Boylston, because the original count said many. So now you guys have the number on Boylston. I think there's 80 something spots.
82 spots in Boylston.
So it's gotta be possible. I agree, the parking garage at the hotel would be a great place to ask to see if what their capacity typically would be, but also can we decrease the pressure on some of the small streets and up it on Boylston?
Yep, I think Karen can check in with the hotel, see if there's any arrangement they can make with the school. And that would take off some of the burden of permits. And another thing we could try, which I don't recall if it's done in the past, but we could When we issue the permits, I'm sure everyone is trying to park as close to the school as they can get. So we could put, house number ranges on the permits so they spread out evenly on the street. Like Upland's a very large road, but I think everyone is parking near Irving and trying to get to the school. So that could help if we spread out the permits.
Did you also, I'm curious when the Walnut Street count was, because I was a little surprised by that number. I live on Walnut.
I think the Walnut one was 2019 when the original permit was done. We did recount it and it's approximate because the spaces aren't lined, so it depends on how the people park. But the original count was 55 and the recount, assuming every car takes about 20 feet, was 58.
You gotta think with 80 something on Boylston,
Yeah.
we gotta be up that number.
And do you know what percent, going back to the Cypress Street and the conflict with the New Lincoln School, do you know what percent of Cypress is permitted?
I don't know offhand. I don't think it's a large amount. We didn't notice Cypress Street, so I don't know if we'd be able to do that at this meeting.
That's something to consider as we're thinking about how that.
But I do think if there is, I think there's capacity on Boylston Street, if you wanted to ship some of the cars to get a lot of conflicts and. More of that.
And when you count the Boylston, like I know that parking is, like people end up parking on the sidewalk because it's very narrow. Like, how do you determine what's parkable on what?
So the parking lane on Boylston was striped at 6 feet. And it's a 12, I think it's a 12-foot travel lane. So there is room for everyone to fit. It's just that you park over the white line.
Right, or you go onto the sidewalk, which is a lot of people do.
When I was out there, I didn't notice anyone that day doing it. But there is room on the street if they.
Okay.
Also ends up turning into like a one lane road, like. Should.
Ted, the last time this was done was Gateway East completed?
The last time the permit program was in?
When the ninth grade school was being constructed, most of that was in 2020, 2021, right? So it started before that.
Testing my memory here.
Did we do a permit program for the ninth grade school?
Yes, the high school was there.
They were the last ones there.
Okay.
I just don't remember if that section of Walnut between Highway and Route 9 was completed.
Should have been.
Because there was parking along there too, yes.
I did not include that in the count. I didn't go that far. It was between.
I mean, compared to Cypress, that's significantly closer.
The other side of Walnut. Yes, I don't think there's much.
It was a pretty good stretch.
There's 8 cars there. That's much.
I don't think it's signed for the housing there in particular.
No, it's regular 2-hour parking.
So I think what you're hearing from us, and I don't, folks jump in here, is like we've heard from the comments, I think we generally support the concept. We just like to have it spread out a little bit more. I think if we can push some more folks onto Boylston Street, Karen, if you can maybe talk to the hotel, and I don't know what their capacity is like. Maybe we could do some kind of a deal with them, put some teacher cars in there. I think that'd be an elegant solution. Good question, Matt.
I'm just wondering.
I can definitely look into that.
Yeah, I know.
They're not gonna get that away for free.
Well,
There's also.
we have other leverages,
Yeah.
perhaps.
There's also the children's parking lot. I mean, it's a little further, but it's still not that far.
But I think Boylston Street can be a.
I
push a lot there.
I would imagine if they could park in a garage, they'd walk a little further. I thought they're ideal.
Yeah, it's true.
Children's is a little complicated in their conditions when they were built. They did not want it to be used for satellite parking for other locations, so they're prohibited from providing parking to other locations long term.
Like whom?
The zoning board of appeals and it's in their transportation demand management plan.
Could waive that temporarily, I suppose. But no, I get, so I think you're hearing what we're saying, which is,
One thing that would be helpful that you did on a previous teacher perm program is to allow staff to move spots as needed. So generally approve it as shown, but give staff discretion. And then if we hear complaints a little bit upland, we could move more cars on Boylston. And we'll also do the house number zones to make sure people don't clump up as well.
I like that.
yeah, me too. What's the sense of the board here? Do we want to approve this tonight provisionally, or do we want to wait? Did Dan do a little more pencil sharpening? Strong feelings? Don't all speak at once now.
Well, this has a 30-day review period, right?
21.
Period.
Exactly.
And they need to start, the teachers don't need to be there for 3
September?
months, right? So.
Yeah,
I think Karen might have details. I think some staff might be moving in July.
Yes, we'll have some administrative staff in early July, and then the teachers return mid-August to start setting up their classrooms.
So maybe for the motion, you could approve it, but give staff discretion to move permits. For example, on Boylston Street to relieve pressure in the neighborhood. And then we could do the neighborhood numbering to spread the cars out.
I think I would be comfortable proving it, asking you guys to move things around, and then even just for reporting back, even if it's been approved, can we see the numbers at the next meeting? Like where they ended up all shaken out.
Sure. So, Karen, when would all the teachers be back?
Mid-August, she said.
Mid-August. So,
I would also like to just note that a question and answer was put in from Sarah Rosenberg Scott, and she lives at 35 Walnut Place and is just confirming what we're talking about, that anything that we can do to offset this onto Boylston Street and the hotel would be extremely appreciated. Just wanted to note that.
thank you.
could we give a board update in September after the teachers have moved in, the permits have been used?
Sure.
Yeah. And limited. By house number. All right, I'm trying to come up with some language here, so. I guess what we're discussing is approval to reactivate the old Lincoln School staff permit parking program. The 2024-2028 school years. With the requirements that the staff report back to the transportation board and to the neighborhood in September, at a September meeting. That staff have the discretion to move permits as they deem fit to relieve pressure on any given street. And that the permits be limited by house number on each street.
Were we adding a maximizing on Boylston, or is that later?
Yeah, we're also directing staff to maximize the number of permits placed on Boylston Street. And to talk to the nearby hotel, see if there's any available space there that. The goodness of their heart, they'll give our hardworking teachers. Does that give you enough to work with, Dan?
Yeah, and then I just wanted, for the house thing, you say a house number range, so only one house number, but a
Limited.
range number.
Yeah, house, limited by house number, by a range of house numbers. On any given street. Does that make sense to everybody? Does that encompass?
Covered.
No, okay. And then I'm not gonna name all the streets here,
As presented is.
as presented. Look at that. All right, so did you get all that? Everybody know what we're voting on? It's to reactivate the old Lincoln School staff permit parking program. The 2024-2028 school years. With the requirements that staff report back to the board in September on utilization. That staff have the discretion to move permits as needed to relieve pressure on any given street. And that the permits be limited by house number ranges on a given street. And that the maximum number feasible be placed on Boylston Street to relieve pressure on other neighborhood streets. think I got it. Is there a motion to that effect?
Same move.
Thank you, Jonathan. Is there a second? Okay, Wendy,
Yes.
Len,
Yes.
I'm a yes. Jonathan,
Yes.
Sonali?
Yes.
It's unanimous. Okay. Thank you. Thank you to all the commenters. We appreciate your letting us know. We're gonna move on to item 9. Only 10 minutes ahead, which is a discussion on the select board appeal petition regarding the April 10th Transportation Board decision on issue number 9, quote, discussion and action on the Pierce School project request for a driveway curb cut and parking restriction at 72 Harvard Street and transportation related improvements on Harvard Street, School Street, and Washington Street. Okay, who's got this one? Dan, Sam, Dan?
We didn't prepare too much. I figured it was
Okay.
more discussion among the board members. In your packet, though, is the appeal and memo material from the previous board when the item was taken up. And then this is going to the select board next Tuesday. And at that meeting, I plan to give the select board the memo materials. They'll have the appeal, and the Pierce School team will be there to answer any in-depth questions.
So just, I think we folks have read this. The crux of the appeal is that they don't like the removal of the 3 parking spaces. They don't think we need a school in the entrance on Harvard Street, and they want more study, which is very reasonable. Thank you all for that. So I have been talking about this a lot with a lot of people, and so Sam, I'm gonna direct this to you, Dan and Dan. A lot of this to me hinges on the question, and this came up a lot at the 2 meetings. We had 3 hours of discussion on this already. Does the parking garage require a second egress under building code?
I think that's a better question for the Pierce team.
So I think what we were told, and I wasn't there April 10th, but I watched the meeting, so I'll get to this. A lot of it hinged on the fact that there was gonna be this fence in the middle of the garage that for some reason had to be there, and that's why you needed a second entrance. I then heard some folks say that you need 2 egresses, two ways in because of fire code and building code. Now I'm hearing that might not be the case. So I guess the question is, does anybody know? Jonathan, I'll look to you.
I mean, we've approved many garages don't have 2 egresses
We have.
from vehicular standpoint. I'm sure they needed more than 1 egress. Human body standpoint.
Yes.
I do believe that as far as this board is concerned, our purview is the curb cut, not necessarily what occurs within the garage. We are not within any ability to change what the school does, short of whether or not they have a curb cut. I don't know why the fence is required. But we were told that that is what is required to move forward, and the architects needed to complete their design.
Yep.
So that's where we are. I don't think any of us want to put a curb cut on Harvard Street. But we're locked into that position until told otherwise by the architects.
There's also been a lot of discussion about the prohibition of the left turn from Harvard to school. I think a lot of folks, there's a lot of people from Auburn Street, not the board here, who seem to feel that that's gonna push traffic onto their street, which is a very valid concern. So again, we've had 3 hours of discussion on this topic. I understand the basis of the appeal, and I absolutely respect people's decision. I guess we receive information from people that we receive the information from, and we sort of have to trust that what we're being told is accurate. I'm still not sure there is an absolute need for this entrance on Harvard Street and therefore the need for the curb cut, but at present, we're told there is. So if that is the case, I think you can't have a garage entrance without a curb cut. So the curb cut, I think, is one thing. You could try. I mean, that would be cool. And then the second issue is the prohibition on the left from Harvard to school. I think those are two separate issues, and I guess I'd like to discuss them
I mean,
separately.
I don't know if they are, because I don't think we would have brought that up had the curb cut not been on the table.
So you're suggesting if the curb cut if the curb remains, there's no need for the prohibition on it.
I mean, why would the school come to us with any changes to the curbside at all at that point? So I would imagine all of it would just go away. And this is all added expense to the school project because of a fence. Honestly,
What happens, I mean, let's say we didn't approve it, like what then happens?
They have to use the Washington Street entrance as the only way in and out of the garage for the school.
And if they say that's absolutely not feasible, or it's another $20 million, or it's then.
Yeah, I don't see how it would add cost.
I would imagine they'd be coming to us with improvements for that egress.
Which is already in use, seems to work just fine somehow. Anybody have any questions before we start hearing from the public? Ms. McBain. Please, we'd love to hear from you.
Not here. She's on Zoom.
You're not here. I'm sorry, I thought you.
I'm
I'm
Barbara
sorry.
Hebert.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm sort of her.
I didn't write it down. Ms. Hebert, please.
Oh, okay. Yes, so I have lived in the Pierce School neighborhood for many years and worked with Carol McBain on this petition, which, I mean, we've invested a fair amount of time in this. Carol McBain and I, along with 300 Brookline community members, attended many of the meetings held by the Brookline Department of Planning and Community Development last year to create the new Harvard Street zoning plan as part of the MBTA Communities Act. The plan was overwhelmingly approved at special town meeting in November of 2023. One of the issues discussed and agreed upon by the community was the danger and negative consequences of a curb cut on a main street, such as Harvard Street, to pedestrians and, disrupting the flow of people. And there are many people who use Harvard Street. Your study has shown that. And as a result, the new zoning law prohibits curb cuts on Harvard Street. Curb cuts allowing vehicle traffic to cross the sidewalk on a pedestrian-oriented main street create a real danger, especially to children, people with disabilities, and seniors, as well as cyclists. Brookline's desire is to create a new Pierce school to be accessible to all and a welcoming environment to students and families. So we're asking, can you please take a second look at the entrance to the staff parking garage? Could the current Washington Street entrance to the garage and library parking be used to access the parking for the new Pierce School? If it's possible, we could avoid a potentially dangerous plan while retaining 3 parking spaces for visitors to access the Harvard Street shops and Pierce School. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hebert. Anyone else in the room wish to speak on this matter?
I did talk to the planning. I don't know if somebody does.
Can I sit here?
You want to wait for public comment or should I can mention?
Just hold up a second.
We have 2 virtual.
Okay, anybody else in the room want to talk about Harvard Street and the Pierce School curb cut? Nope, okay. Let's hear from the public online, and then we can talk amongst ourselves. Sam, we've
got some people in the ether.
Cool.
First up is AJ Good. Good. AJ, will you please unmute? And if you want to turn on your camera, you can.
Okay, perfect. Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Oh, perfect, great. This is just related to the curb cut and the plans for the renovation of the Harvard Street, School Street intersection. And somebody had come up to us this week and told us that there was plans to move that bus stop in front of our condo building as part of the this whole renovation. And I had attended the last meeting, and I didn't hear anything about the moving of that bus stop. And so, I think a number of our fellow condo association is here at this meeting to voice our concern about that. We're one of the rare small areas on Harvard Street that has bedrooms and living space very close to the curb. And we're concerned about the noise, and we have some steps and some stonework, and we're concerned about the loitering that would happen, and we're also concerned about we didn't hear about this moving of the bus stop to in front of our condos as part of this whole renovation and curb cut process from the architects and at the last transportation meeting. So the first thing before I talk any further about it, is that part of the plan that was discussed, or?
Mr. Good, I'm afraid you might have heard some incorrect information. There's no plans to move the bus stop at this time.
Other than on a temporary basis, only when there is road.
Yeah, when they're doing construction of the school, they might have to move it temporarily, but there's no permanent move planned.
Okay, well, not permanent, but with that temporary move, they said for 3.5 years was their definition of temporary, and that is what we're concerned about. And in fact, most of the people, even just walking home today, there's a bus stop across the street at Walgreens, and there were 10 to 15 people there. They've had to put, additional benches on Fridays and Saturday nights. There's a lot of people, and we have small kids whose bedrooms are very close to this area. And most of the people who are using this bus stop are actually trying to access the areas around Town Hall, the library, all the businesses that are closer to Brookline Village. So then rather than pulling it back towards this small little area of unique residential living, we would highly recommend considering moving it further towards Town Hall in the business area. In fact, if you look at Harvard Street, there's no bus stop in front of any residential area all the way from Route 9 all the way up past Coolidge Corner. All of them are in front of commercial areas and not close to residential homes. And so that's what we're concerned about. And we just would hope that it could be considered that the bus stop move closer to Town Hall and in a commercial space, and not create sort of a private nuisance to the people who live close to that area.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone else online, Sam?
Yep. Carol McBain, would you like to unmute, share your comment?
Hello, I'm Carol McBain, and I'm also a neighbor of the Pierce School. And our neighbors were quite concerned about the loss of the parking spaces because those would be used both for businesses and for visitors to the school. But primarily, looking at your report from MDS, we saw that they felt that any delay in the traffic at that area would not be good for the school, and allowing a new curb cut, which would have more left turns, even as they're trying to eliminate turns onto School Street, which would be mediated by the lights and crossing guard, they want to have even more left turns into the garage from the curb cut. So there could be even twice as many turns into the building from that area. So we realized that it would cause some delay for the staff to have only one entrance, but we would appreciate it if you could investigate with the school why that entrance is necessary. Since we weren't able to appeal that decision, we can only talk to you about it. So we think the best solution would be not to have any left turns crossing that sidewalk for the safety of the school and for the flow of traffic past School Street. So thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McBain. Appreciate you taking the time.
Richard Tuck. Richard, would you like to provide your feedback?
Sure, this is Richard Tuck. We are the owners of the office building adjacent to the Pierce School at 68 Harvard Street. And we are kind of an odd, small office building that actually has a curb cut. And we use it for both as a loading dock and for parking. I'm aware that of the dangers of coming out of our one parking spot. I would say that we probably are 2 trips that cross the sidewalk from our building. One car coming in and then leaving at the end of the day. And even that one, when we have found, is we're extremely careful. Because of the dangers and the numbers of people that are using that sidewalk. So other than the obvious statements that others have made about the dangers of curb cuts in that location, having 150 trips that are probably unnecessary doesn't seem to make sense to me. One of the comments that was made earlier is that whether or not you had the ability to not approve this curb cut. Well, if you don't have the ability to do that, then I guess first question would be, what's the point? And if you don't have the ability to do that, then aren't we allowing architects to drive policy within the town? That doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense either. Just to point out that some of the other parking spaces that have been taken are used by the special needs vans that are used in the afternoon in front of 62 Harvard Street. I think they're taking up 2 or 3 of the parking spaces there. So to lose any additional ones is really a significant loss to the area, to the businesses, to the office users, and in particular to our second floor tenant, which is a speech therapy office. So they take up the entire floor of our building, and most of their clients, patients are young people. There's a lot of kids that come just to that second floor alone, and the dangers are obvious to not act on it when it's possible to remove the fence and use the additional, use the other entrance on Washington Street. Just doesn't make sense. We had also talked about whether or not we had been receiving notices from the building department regarding the school, and we have not. The notices to us, and I suspect to others, have been either non-existent or confusing. I thank you for the clarity of the one that was received for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Tuck. Appreciate it. Anybody else, Sam?
There was one comment left by Sandy Aronson. They said, I would like to concur with concerns being raised relative to curb cut, the issues of the left turn change, and the multi-year movement of the bus stop. And with that, we have 18 attendees and no additional hands raised.
Okay, I guess last call online on this item. You can use the raise hand function. Last call online.
We have one raised hand, Stacy Hurwitz. Stacy, would you like to unmute and share your comment?
Yes, thank you. I live in the same complex as AJ, and I just wanted to not only second what he said about moving the bus stop, but we also, it's not just about the bus stop being, near people's bedroom, but it's also about, it would be right near our front door. And it's really a safety issue, as well as a privacy issue. So I just wanted to add a little color to that as well.
Okay.
Brian, can you clarify the bus stop thing? Because
Yeah.
we're not moving the bus stop.
No. Yeah, we're not moving the bus stop. It might have to be moved temporarily for construction. That will be figured out, at a later date, and I understand you don't want the stop moved in front of, I assume you live in the building where Bennett Fitness is and the spa. You don't want the bus stop moved there. We hear you. Understood.
Can we clarify which bus stop?
It's for the 66th, it's currently.
No, I know, but.
Yeah, I think it's,
Why would that one move?
so the one right in front of Pierce School, where they're gonna be reconstructing the building, the sidewalk.
Yeah.
The construction management plan, they've hinted to us that it's gonna be moving to the near side of the intersection, so opposite Walgreens.
That's where it used to be.
Yep, where in 2018, it used to be in that location.
Yeah.
And then we moved to the far side. So it'd be temporarily, it's gonna be under their construction management plan, so,
Okay.
Isn't that a daycare there?
there is a daycare there, yeah.
Used to be.
So which is the building that they're talking?
They're kind of adjacent to the daycare.
In the condominium.
Right across from Walgreens.
Okay.
Okay.
I feel like there was some misinformation being floated around.
Okay.
not
So
deciding.
we don't control the construction management plan. I hate to give you a bureaucratic answer, but I don't know much about that. But I don't think there's not a plan to move this formally. So if it does move, it'll move for a period of time and then it'll come back. So we'll have to get you a better answer than that. I'm sorry, I don't know.
No other hands raised, and if that's last call, then.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so Ms. Hebert, I just wanted to know, I hear what you said about zoning, thank you. We checked with the planning department. It doesn't appear that the Pierce School is in the map that was drawn and approved at town meeting. So while we may or may not agree that curb cuts are a good thing, and we're gonna talk about that, the zoning bylaw doesn't apply here. And we've checked that with planning, so I take your point, and again, thank you for coming, but I don't think that necessarily applies. So I think what we're talking about is it the left turn from Harvard to school and the curb cut itself is what we're sort of up against. And again, to me, it comes down to, is the second entrance required or not by the building code? And nobody seems to know the answer to this question. And this is what we were told. Again, in our 3 hours of discussion, we had to kind of do this because it's absolutely required for the building. And if we didn't do it, they couldn't build the school. That doesn't seem to be the case anymore. And I'm just confused. So.
Did they say that during our meeting? I thought they just talked about separating the two mooring. Or, not mooring, but the town. Maybe could be mooring if they're on fine, like the town parking and
It's a peace wall.
and the
It is the building department's jurisdiction, the garages, but since the very beginning of this project, they're just saying that the two garages have to remain separate.
Again, I don't buy it. It's just ridiculous. This isn't Northern Ireland.
Because they don't trust people to park in designated parking spots. Okay.
and they're not. Are
And
they
yet we trust people to use our permit
rebuilding
parking program on street.
Yeah.
I know, it's preposterous. Okay, so for me, if it's not required by the building code, I don't want to put a curb cut on Harvard Street. We just were told we had to put a curb cut on Harvard Street because they couldn't build the school without it. It doesn't appear to be the case anymore. So this is the answer. This is what I need to find. And so, that's where I'm at. With respect to the turn on his school street. Yeah, that issue kind of goes away with curb cut. I think you're right on that.
I would rather them spend the money that the school says is hard to find on the RRFBs.
Yeah.
And the other things that we
Yeah.
may or may not be getting
That we asked for.
than a garage door.
Sorry, Ms. Hebert, yes.
Can I just say that even though it may not be included,
Mhm.
it's still the same argument is relevant, and it's a lot of children in that area. And we want to be able to include people with disabilities, and
Yes.
I think that the principle applies.
Fair enough. Absolutely fair enough. Okay, anybody have anything else on this? So, logistics, I'm gonna go to the select board meeting next week and talk to them and sort of explain the process that we went through. I know, Dan and Sam and Dan will be there with a lot of other people. The school design team will be there. There's gonna be a lot of people. I'm gonna try and get an answer to this question about the second entrance between now and then. And if it comes to it and it's not required, I'll probably mention that personally, I feel like we don't necessarily need to do this unless it's absolutely required. So that's where I'm at. But I'm not gonna speak for all of you. I'm just gonna sort of talk about the process that we went through, what we heard. John?
I'm in agreement with that issue. Should, for some reason, the garage be required.
Mhm.
And the garage driveway be required.
Mhm.
The garage is obviously gonna be there. I think one of the reasons we pushed for the removal of the left turn lane was a remediation for pedestrians on that sidewalk who are being hit with a narrower sidewalk. If that curb cut is there, a wider sidewalk provides them with the same level area that they would have had otherwise. The bus stop would be larger and ability to have a covering. And we don't have that right now. So to benefit the pedestrians and the transit users, when they're provided a detriment of a car only driveway, right, that was the reasons associated with that.
Okay.
Did I capture your points?
I agree.
Would it be helpful for you to have like a statement from us to say that we're curious?
Absolutely.
I don't
You
know,
can
like-
arrive in force if you want.
You're all welcome, please, but,
I prefer for the first option to be, no, you don't need it.
well, yeah. And I think that's where certainly I'm at. I feel like that's where a lot of us are at. So we have to get an answer to this question. And I'm a little frustrated because I've asked the building department to weigh in on this, and we haven't heard. I've asked the school design team to weigh on this, and they don't have an answer. So, you know, we're civilians here. We're sort of captured by the information we're given, and we have to react to that. So obviously, we prefer to not have the curb cut on Harvard Street. I think everyone's point about kids crossing there is completely valid. You know where we're at.
What is the process now? So this was appealed to the select board's discussing this. Are we required to vote on this, or does the select board now just make the
So
decision?
it's a little unclear. This is like never happened before.
We went for a stop sign.
It's never happened in my tenure.
I know it happens.
That happened on Babcock Street.
I wasn't here.
Yeah.
So
There
there
was an appeal.
the select board
Select board.
can either uphold your decision or send it back to you. So it would come back to you. You could-
But that can also be appealed to town meeting.
If select board upheld your decision, you could go to town meeting.
I've never seen.
Wow.
And that's relatively new.
But I mean, even all of this, if it gets kicked back and forth from one place to another, so there's no way for us to say, no, you can't have an entrance to that garage when they're saying we can't build this school without an entrance to the garage. So at the end of the day, it really goes back to whether or not the building planning has to actually have that
Yes.
entrance there.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
a lot of this feels like very,
Exactly.
But if they don't need it and we've already voted for it, then the select board, without us kind of encouraging them to repeal that, they might just be like, well, the transportation board supported it and we're not gonna go against the transportation board. So it might be that we still wanna, I mean, it sounds like you're doing that, Ryan, but anyway, but to sort of say that we really only support this if it's required by code.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask the select board to send it back to us. And I'm sure they would. I'm sure they'd rather not have to vote on this if they don't have to.
I don't know that we want to ask them to send it back to us necessarily, but if, but maybe if it's like, yes, now we've discovered that we don't need the entrance there anymore. And we've already approved it, but we need to somehow take some sort of like step to unapprove it, even though it's not gonna be there anymore.
I hear what you're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, they could also take no action at the select board level, and we could put it on our June agenda and rescind it if we have to. It's also very valid, so. That's where I'm at,
Is this-
folks,
is-
sir.
is this-
Hold on, was it?
Is this missing, the building code would be covered by the planning board? Building board?
I don't know.
Is it missing a variance, or, you know, even if it's required? Is this something that really should be coming back to us, or should someone be going to whatever board controls the amount of entrances for a garage and looking for a variance there instead?
Yeah, I agree.
If two are required, there's really nothing we can do.
Right. That's the point. That's what we
Right.
need to- that's the answer we need.
So at that point, I'd be curious to know if there's a variance possible for something like that.
Yeah. And usually it'll be the building department. They handle all the, like, in terms of fire exits. When we needed a variance for one of our town buildings, like,
Yeah.
we would go through that, so.
Well, can you guys please go up to wherever their offices are and
Yeah.
ask them, because they will not respond to me.
Absolutely. I'll reach out to the building commissioner.
Sir,
I defer to John, who has perhaps a little more information than I do.
sir.
On Auburn Street.
Tom wanted to hear about the left turn in.
Oh,
Okay, well, we haven't started item 10 yet. Or have we?
What sort of communication?
Well, it's all related, so you're welcome to hold your discussion until then, or we could hear it now. It's all related.
It's up to you. So
Why run ahead?
So I'm John Heber. I'm a resident of 21 Auburn Street, which is very close to the intersection of Harvard and Auburn Street. So I am the petitioner who is bringing the appeal before the select board to the left turn decision, and specifically to the decision that was made to restrict left turns during peak travel hours at the corner of Harvard Street northbound and School Street. The concern that caused my initial that caused me to file the petition and seek support from the public, of which there were 36 people who signed the petition, was primarily about the traffic that would be coursing up from the intersection of School Street and Harvard to, if that were closed, if that left turn were not possible, the next left turn is Auburn Street. At the board meeting on April 10th, it seemed, and I've gone over the transcript several times, it seemed that there really wasn't enough understanding of the intersection of Harvard and Auburn Street to merit the quick decision on the left turn. So I filed the petition, or about the time I filed the petition, I had, actually a week before I filed the petition, I had requested more information about any kind of traffic studies that had been done, because there was a traffic study that was referenced during that board meeting on April 10th. Amy Ingalls, the transportation administrator, sent me a file of the Bonas and Associates traffic impact assessment from May of 2022, a few hours before I had to submit the petition. So I really didn't have time to digest this very lengthy study, but in going through that study by Vanessa and Associates, which was of 21 intersections in the vicinity of Pierce School. It is very curious that the intersection of Harvard and Auburn streets is not included. The northernmost portion of that study area is Auburn Street itself. It runs from Auburn to Park to Washington to Cypress to Route 9, all the way down Route 9 to past Washington Street. Cuts in. I have slides if you'd like to see. I could do screen sharing.
All right now.
Okay.
We're following you, just fine.
Okay, so the study area then continues up Harvard Street, takes a quick jog, like an arm, off Aspinwall to St. Paul, comes back down St. Paul, and then rejoins Harvard Street. And it's very curious that the intersection of Harvard Street and Auburn Street is notched out of the study area. I mean, it was almost like it was intentionally omitted, which is very curious. Anyway, the information that I submitted to the board earlier today includes the study area diagrams. It includes a close-up of the Harvard Street, Auburn Street intersection. And it also includes a Google satellite map showing the area. And I point out that within that area of about 100 feet circumference from the actual intersection, that there are a possibility of 22 vehicle turns in and out of the car wash, in and out of the Stop and Shop gas station. There are 2 preschools in the area. There are entrances and exits from those 2 preschools that come out either into that intersection or from the Bright Horizons daycare. The exit from their short-term parking lot where the kids are dropped off in the morning and picked up in the afternoon actually goes out onto Auburn Street, which at that point is a 2-way street. In the Van Ness study that was done in May of 2022, Auburn Street was identified as a 1-way street entirely. It wasn't even recognized as a 2-way street at the junction of Harvard Street, and for 100 feet up to be able to accommodate the driveway from the Bright Horizons daycare center. Important to note that the 2 daycare centers, the busiest time of day for them, of course, is exactly at the peak travel times that the left turn from Harvard northbound onto School Street would be closed. So that would guarantee that the traffic, whatever overflow traffic through that intersection, would be coming up to Auburn Street for anybody who wanted to get out to Washington Street and head westbound on Washington Street. That would put, of course, an additional burden on the intersection of Park and Auburn and the intersection of Park and Harvard Avenue and Park and Washington Street. Curiously, the Van Ness Associates study did look at some of those intersections. Out of the 21 that it did study, it did look at the intersections of Park and Auburn at the other end, and with Harvard Ave and with Park Street, but Auburn Street was not reviewed. Also, it's very odd that that study used Auburn Street as the northernmost study area, northernmost border of the study area, because the Pierce School District goes far beyond that and includes Vernon Street, Harris Street, Marion Street, just in our neighborhood. So there is real concern about almost more importantly, not just the traffic through the neighborhood, but much more importantly, at the intersection of Harvard and Auburn. There's one other thing about that intersection. It is not perpendicular. That intersection is oblique. So if you're traveling north on Harvard Street, if you want to make a left turn onto Auburn, it is not a 90-degree turn. It's about a 75-degree turn. And what drivers do is, especially if there's oncoming traffic, they will try to get ahead of that oncoming traffic because the traffic will back up from School Street at times of the day. They'll try to jump the traffic that is coming down Harvard Street southbound, and that puts them at risk of heading into the two-way traffic that's on Auburn Street, with, of course, them thinking it might be a one-way. So it can be a dangerous intersection. I also, in my wonderful slides that I produced, show that this is a heavily pedestrian traveled intersection. So our concern is that by removing by eliminating the left turn ability at the peak travel times, that what is happening is that the dangers and the reason why that decision was made is that the problems and the risks are merely being moved 2 blocks to the next available left turn, which is Auburn Street, which does not have a crossing guard or signaling, traffic signaling, or pedestrian signaling, and it's just a dangerous, potentially dangerous situation.
Thank you very much. Very well thought out. Appreciate it for taking the time to do all of that and bringing that to our attention. You have your maps and are great, by the way. Thank you. Very helpful. Any other comments? I guess we're now taking items 9 and 10 simultaneously. Any other comments from the room on the Harvard Street situation? Anybody online?
There's an additional comment by AJ Good.
Okay.
But it pertained to the movement of the bus stop and indicating that 3 to 3.5 years is a long time, and just asked that there be a recommendation to investigate this with the construction team further. And then there's a comment from David Corbett. It was just about the process of the select board sending it back to the T board for a different recommendation. And then we have 3 raised hands. So
okay.
I will allow Linda Pelkey. Linda, would you like to talk first? And then we'll go to Michael Silvich. Great.
Sure, I can do that. Hello, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Linda Olson-Pelkey, a town meeting member from precinct 17, advisory committee member. I listened intently to your discussion about the curb cut because that was my main issue and reason for being here. And I'm pleased that you're leaning in the direction of if it is not absolutely required. And I would be careful about how you define that because people's convenience and not wanting to figure out how to manage the parking is not needed in my estimation. So tying it to the code, et cetera, in the way you're thinking of it seems appropriate. I'm trying to understand why this left turn lane elimination is quote unquote going away if the driveway is not there. I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense to me. My impression of the left turn lane elimination was about giving more space at that corner. And why is that not needed still, even if there's no curb cut?
Okay, thank you, Linda. We will try to answer all of those questions at the end of the public comment period.
Next up is Michael Silvich, if you'd like to unmute.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, I'm gonna pass the
Okay.
microphone to my wife.
We're a team. I'm Rena Silovich. We live on number 70 Harvard Avenue, and our children are Pierce School graduates. And again, we're very concerned about no left turns. Really based on our experience, there's been, I would say, at least 6 or Saturdays that Washington Street going towards Route 9 has been closed at Park Street, for construction. There's a big sign that says detour, and the cars have no choice. They go down our street, which, like Auburn, is a 1 block long. We have had traffic backed up basically the entire length of the street. I counted once, and there were 35 vehicles up to our house. And I would estimate that if the rest of the street is filled, there's probably about 50 cars waiting to go onto Harvard Street.
You're talking about Harvard Avenue.
Yeah, we are on Harvard Avenue, but going on to Harvard Street. I don't see how this is going to be safe. If you can explain that there's less traffic on a weekday morning than on a Saturday afternoon, maybe I would think it's safe. I'm very concerned. I mean, my husband and I are over 80. If we needed first responders, how could they get down the street? There's no places for the cars to basically go to the side. It's a narrow street, there's parking on one side. So then I'm thinking, well, they could park either on Harvard Street or Park Street and walk down with a stretcher or whatever else they needed. And then I said to myself, wait a minute, Rena, what happens if there's a fire? You can't do that. So, there's just a lot of traffic. I was at one point convinced that there should be gates at the town borders.
Oh,
and
come
you
on.
could only drive into Brookline if you had a reason.
Sullivan, please, we're not gonna put gates at the borders of Brooklyn.
I know, you can't. And one very last thing, I think you really should consider, in the morning, at certain times of the year, there's a lot of solar glare when the children are going to school. And cars, if they're going to turn down Harvard Avenue, are going to the east. And when they make their left turn at Harvard Street, again, they're facing east. And I really have to point this out because 7 years ago, I'm walking across a crosswalk on a side street, and I got nailed by a car who basically didn't see me because of the solar glare. You would really have to have, I would think, crossing guards in the morning. It really wouldn't even be safe for them. So, there has to be, if it's, I don't know, my children dealt with the sidewalk and it seemed to work. Maybe you don't need, the other way of widening the sidewalk would be to remove the trees and the grass, and that would make it wider. It's very difficult. What's going to be safe for one group maybe is not so safe for other people. And there has to be some way of accommodating everything.
Thank you very much.
Yes, just to summarize, if in fact there's no left turn from School Street onto Harvard Street, that means that cars that would normally want to make that left-hand turn will just go up another block to Park Street, then go down Park Street to our street, Harvard Avenue, go to Harvard Street, and then make the left turn there. So it would basically require them to, effectively avoid School Street and just take a detour down Park Street, down Harvard Avenue, and left turn onto Harvard Street, which, my wife has just explained why that has safety and, logistical implications. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. and Mrs. Silovich. Appreciate you taking the time. Sam, who we got next?
I have good news. There are 21 attendees and there are no other hands raised.
There's one hand raised here.
Oh, hey, Mike.
Hi. Like, can we just do last call for online? Last call for online. Okay. Select Board Member Sandman.
Thanks, Chairman King. Thanks, Brian. I just want to know what your process is going to be from this point. I know an appeal's been filed with Select Board. Honestly, I was expecting that would result in a hearing at the Select Board next week. But are you folks going to take this up again, and are we going to get it back at some point from you? What happens next again?
So what we discussed so far is we, as a board feel, the sense that I get is that we are not in love with the notion of the curb cut on Harvard Street. We believe we were told it was required, and it doesn't seem to be required. So we're trying to nail that down. If it is or isn't required, I think that will direct a lot of what happens. I plan to attend the select board hearing next week, and if we find out that the curb cut is not required, I'm going to respectfully request that you take no action as a select board and let us take it back up in June, and we will probably rescind the decision. If this curb cut is required, I think our decision will stand based on the fact that we all want to get the school built. And then it'll be up to the select board to uphold or send it back to us.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Jonathan.
I just realized it's a little more complicated than that.
Yeah.
Included in the curb cut are all of the improvements to Washington Street and Harvard Street.
Yeah.
So we could just flat out rescind it. We'd have to all
Right.
either vote for something else.
You could rescind the curb cut authorization. And possibly the Dutch authorization. Wendy, did you have a question? Did I see your hand up? No?
No,
Okay, I'm seeing things now.
I think I was pointing to my experiment.
Just in hypotheticals though, on left turn,
Well,
I find it hard to obligate the school to move a curb line that they're not touching. For the benefit of the street.
well, okay, so there was a few questions from the comments that we should take up, so. I don't believe there's any proposal to ban left turns from school to Harvard. Correct? Okay, so it seems like, Mr. Disilovich, I think your concerns, we hear them. I don't think that that's on the table at this point, so you should be fine. And I think your issue is sort of taken care of there. The question from Linda Pelkey was the relationship is there a relationship between the curb cut and the no left from Harvard to school? Jonathan, you want to take a stab at that?
Say again, sorry.
The linkage between the curb cut and the left turn from Harvard to school.
So a condition that we the board had asked the school to bring to us as part of removing or adding the curb cut was to remove the left turn in order to provide for equal benefit for the pedestrians and transit users for a sidewalk that was being lessened in its walkability.
Right.
As a result of the curb cut.
Because there's a left turn lane that would go away, you can make the sidewalks wider. Again, that correct?
Yeah.
Thank you. I remember that.
Anecdotally, I will point out that the bike lane stripe line is worn down by cars because they have to merge over as a result of that left turn lane, which means that they are encroaching regularly on the bike lane traveling down Harvard Street.
Yes.
Anecdotally.
Okay. Anyone else have any questions, comments, concerns on this? So
one more on the traffic volumes.
Please.
At one point, we did look at other options for School Street.
Yeah.
And the NAS did look at origins and destinations.
Yes.
From very large distances away, including commuting traffic. And that seemed to indicate in their opinion, that the volumes would dissipate out throughout the community and not focus solely on one street, say, Auburn. So
Yeah.
Holden would receive a number of cars. Other vehicles would continue down to Brookline Ave or some head down Aspinwall to Brookline Ave or so forth.
Yeah.
In order to move around.
Yeah, I remember
So,
that study. I
To
agree.
assume that one road would take the brunt is unlikely without looking at the full traffic study that was done previously.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that study, and they seem to suggest that folks coming up from Route 9 would turn elsewhere, or, yeah, your point is taken.
Which we questioned at that point too.
So I certainly remember that discussion as well.
I mean, I would say I have shared these concerns about
Yeah.
the movement to these streets that don't have traffic lights that are already, I mean, that whole strip of Harvard has roads, driveways, all sorts of things, and it's quite harrowing when you're both biking and walking there because cars do, they're looking for openings for cars. They're not necessarily paying attention to what's happening on the sidewalk. So I share that concern about, moving to the next closest street. And also, if we don't allow a left into the parking lot, if the parking lot is there and there's a curb cut and there are people who are interested in not allowing left in, those people have to turn around somewhere to get in, and that may mean going around that block. So, which is something to think about in terms of that left into the parking lot. But so, yeah, so I would like the street improvements, and I also agree that to have the turning happen in a place that has a crossing guard and has a all stop for pedestrians, is more desirable than having it on these other streets, funneling the cars to these other streets.
I agree. Okay. Anybody got anything else to say on this?
One more hypothetical.
Oh, I love hypotheticals.
Assuming that the one garage entrance moves forward.
Yeah.
The Washington Street entrance would receive a significant increase in the number of entrances and exits.
Correct.
Six,
It's smaller than the town hall garage.
but it's still 60 vehicles.
The arrival time the same for teachers getting here earlier or?
We have staff that starts at both 7 and 8.
But you're assuming that a significant number of teachers currently go through the school street garage entrance, which I'm not sure.
That's the only, I think that's the only entrance.
It's the only entrance.
The only entrance, there's still, you can't,
They're divided now.
what is wrong with you? This is not Belfast, for Christ's sake.
So my hypothetical question is there any anticipation of that having to have intersection upgrades or restrictions for movements at that particular egress as a result of the increased traffic?
We've made improvements over the years. We can investigate if anything more is needed, but we did build curb extensions at the driveway there at the other side of Washington. And there's signs advising drivers to watch for pedestrians. And we built a ramp up to the library. So we made improvements over the years. I don't know if there's too much more that could be done.
Yeah, I didn't know if there would need to be like a right turnout only during the teacher leave or something.
But currently, it's only an entrance off of Washington Street. The exit is off the school. And so since the school will no longer be there, it would mean that the entrance off of Washington Street would have to be somehow increased in width because currently town hall employees only go in Washington Street and they go out of School Street.
They weren't connected.
At night, they opened up.
At night they open it up, but it's still meant to only be.
What's wrong with you?
I didn't design it.
It's like catacombs down there, apparently.
We need a hearing on the stupid town hall garage, I think. Okay.
I've never heard of it. How do you guys get here?
Honest to God, this is insane. Okay,
I'm done with hypotheticals now.
are you sure?
Oh, yeah.
They can move parking and give parking permits instead of.
Okay, so we put these on the agenda and noticed it in case anybody wanted to come up and make an additional motion, or we could come up with some kind of statement if we wanted to, or give any direction or anything at this point. So I sort of explained what I think I'm gonna do next week at the select board. If I could get the information from the building department, that'd be very helpful. You folks are most welcome to come if you want, but you don't have to.
You know what time it's in there?
I think I requested that they do it on the earlier side, but who knows? Who knows? Do you know, Mike?
Our meetings normally start at 5.
Yeah.
But we typically don't get to substantive items until about 6.
Yeah. So,
Just that.
So there's no need for anybody to make a formal motion at this point. I think you know what I plan to say. You know how my suggestions are going to be. If there's anybody's not comfortable with that, let me know, or we could formalize this now. But I think we all agree, seems to me, that it sort of just comes down to that technicality, so.
I hope we come back next time, saving the school possibly 6 figures in cost.
And by school, you mean the taxpayers?
Yes.
Yes, well, that'd be nice.
Although, I mean, we'll get some benefits on Harvard Street for sure then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Good. Okay, so nobody's happy, so we're doing great. Okay, awesome. It's a very good transportation board meeting. No one's happy. Sure, it's 8:28, let's,
Or in person though.
we'll come back, yeah, we'll be back in 5 minutes.
Thank you.
We only really have one item left, too, it's great.
Yeah, no discussion.
Just discussion.
None of my covers will be.
Everyone's not happy that.
Everyone's unhappy.
Yeah, and just do peak hours. That's a lot of activity at peak hours. Thank you for coming. Actually, nice to come.
So I trust these guys, they know what they're doing.
They know what they're
So,
doing. It's very interesting. I've never pitched anything. Well, they're talking about beefing up curb cut on Harvard, like. Yeah, right up there, maybe a little pulling into the corner, but yeah, that would pull into the new parking garage. But yeah, you know, with that,
This is our first in-person meeting.
Yeah, that's always not right.
I don't know. All I can do is try my best, and it sounds like they're all trying their best.
Yeah.
I think that, you know, I got it. Well, if they went in this.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
actually-
thanks.
Then, you know, what you're signature.
You know, it's like every like. It's really big. I mean.
Now there's more to the right
As I was myself, I was wondering. Yeah. I don't know. I have some offices in You're oftentimes jumping stuff around. We're, I would love to jump in, whatever the person who made this product, we talk to. And the other.
The advantage. Everything else.
Yes, yes, I agree.
Lawyers.
We used to have things.
We used to have.
We used to have.
Lean and I.
I used to have a gavel. Where's my gavel?
Yours.
I'm looking at you, Martin.
I gotta find the block.
Well, someone come back like you.
I want my gavel.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, thank you. I mean, that was a very good question.
Yes, there is.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure what I'm gonna say. I guess,
That's a blue tip right there. Walking up on Park Street.
I want that to be not sure whether.
Yeah.
I mean,
One that's currently in front of the huge street.
There goes another.
That's gonna move back.
How long did I?
Maybe when it's time.
Mike, how are you?
This is a much.
Are you gonna stay for the longer speech discussion too?
Yes, ma'am. I agree.
Offer the voice of the select board.
All right, you good? That's good.
Is here for me on this particular issue?
Can we come back to order?
Harvard Avenue.
Why did it get? Raise your hands up, yeah. You know that. Messing with me. Gavel. No. Oh, please.
Yeah.
In Ireland, over the speaker. Where are we? All right, we're gonna come back to order and we'll take up item 11, which is a discussion of potential parking regulations. Regulation changes on Monmouth Street to restrict parking to permit holders only and potential parking violation fine increase study. This is a discussion item only. We will not be taking any action on this tonight. Gentlemen?
Monmouth Street residents brought to our attention the concerns that they've had with the use of parking on Monmouth Street, given its relation to the Boston Brookline border. This is an area that has easy walking access to the Fenway commercial area. There's major construction projects going on. And there's concern over the use of that parking, given that it's not metered. There are metered parking spaces on St. Mary Street, probably in the ballpark of 8 to 10. But Monmouth Street is currently signed as 2-hour parking, no restrictions and no meters. So the second half of this is that this street commonly is used for parking during Red Sox games. The town has a rate set for Red Sox games that our awesome Jonathan inputs every 2 weeks to make sure that people are paying $22.50 for the duration of a game. And that runs from either 11 or 3 until 8 p.m., depending on the time of the game. So we wanted to bring forth this conversation, the idea that the residents, I don't want to put words in their mouth, but it seems that there was some division on what they deemed to be the best solution. Should there be an 8 to 10 a.m. restriction for residents who have daytime parking permits, or should we leave it as is? How can we address this concern? I think our team agree that an 8 to 10 a.m. restriction for resident permit parking only would definitely combat part of the issue here. It's a common regulation that we've put in many other locations near T-stops and other locations where people might be prone to commuting or spending longer than 2 hours. The second half of this was the question around Brookline's current parking violations. So I did a little review of Brookline, Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville to just get an idea of how our current violations compare to neighboring communities. As you are likely aware, violations are set by Mass General Law, and so I referenced the chapter and sections that provide maximums in terms of what the fees can be set to. I didn't include those maximums, but you can see that Boston, Cambridge, and Somerville, in almost all not in all categories, I only provided references for, is it 8 of what I deemed to be some of the most commonly seen violations in Brookline, not the list of 30 that the town currently has. And you can see that we fall well below, or commonly below, the neighboring communities. So this conversation is about a potential parking regulation change on Monmouth Street based on feedback from the community, and also a potential look ahead at how we could increase our fines to more align with neighboring communities. So that way, when someone who's paying a parking fee for a Red Sox game of $22.50 says, "Oh, I could just risk it and take a $30 ticket instead of $22.50 for paying for the game." That being said, based on the feedback from residents, Superintendent Mike Murphy has confirmed that patrol officers go by Monmouth Street twice a day and on all Red Sox games, but that's obviously not a sustainable solution. So happy to take questions from the board prior to the public.
All right, so let's, thank you. Let's focus on Monmouth Street for a minute. So, just so everyone's aware, we're not gonna take any action tonight. If we do, we can take some action on Monmouth Street and then we could make a recommendation to the select board for the fine increases, right? Is that how that works?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay, Jonathan.
We just talking about finding, is there a towing option here too?
We don't normally tow,
Cause that would be a very big disincentive for.
You have to,
Well, anything.
you have to sign the road for a tow zone and put what the regulation would be.
Okay, Sean Lynn Jones. Would you like to say something?
I would, I've sent in some written comments. I hope you have had a chance to look at them,
Yes.
or you will. And I'll return to that interesting question of towing, because that actually is pertinent, but I didn't include it in my comments. The summary we just had of the situation is very good. I want to add one important general point, though. I'm really happy that Monmouth Street is on the agenda, but I think any action might also take into account Monmouth Court, which is essentially a cul-de-sac off Monmouth Street. And whatever applies to Monmouth Street should also apply to Monmouth Court, because it would make no sense to have any kind of different parking regulation for one and not the other. You know, I've lived on Monmouth Street for almost 30 years. Kathleen Cavell, my fellow town meeting member, I should identify myself as a town meeting member from Precinct 1, 53 Monmouth Street is my address. My fellow town meeting Kathleen Cavell is a longer term resident.
I moved there as a baby.
But the parking situation has never been this bad in our experience. Every space is filling up early. They are not really emptying out at any point during the day. Places where people park that are of dubious legality because they half block a driveway are now always filled. And that never happened the last few years. And it's fairly obvious why this is taking place. There's been this huge residential and commercial construction boom in the Fenway area and to some extent in the Longwood Medical area. More people are living there, working there, shopping there, and that increases the demand for parking. And on top of that, there are many very active construction projects going on, particularly in Fenway, and a very long pipeline of additional projects that have been approved or will be approved by Boston. And the people who are working on those building sites need a place to park, and they're coming to Monmouth Street. And we've had a general return since COVID back to people commuting on the Green Line and hopping on at St. Mary's and parking on Monmouth Street, and generally, you know, coming back to work in the office. Want to say something on this, Kathleen?
I do. Just simply that people who park before 7 a.m. and leave their cars there all day is what the residents are complaining about. When they leave their houses at 7 or just after, the street's all parked up. And that says to me that it's the construction workers, because they need to be on the site by then. And they're there all day, and maybe at 3 or 3:30 or 4, they can leave. So, I mean, that seems to have made some difficult situations much worse. And that's what a lot of the neighbors are telling us. So pre-7 a.m., most people are not parking to commute.
And then there's always a baseline of residents, visitors, contractors, employees and shoppers for Lower Beacon Street who just add to the general demand for parking here. And it's a
Four
problem.
new restaurants coming on Beacon Street, just a block and a half away from Monmouth Street, and therefore 2 blocks away from Monmouth, the end of Monmouth Court where I am.
It's a particular problem, not just because this is a situation where the 2-hour limit isn't working and it's not creating the circulation and the turnover of spaces that it should be creating, but because a lot of people who live on Monmouth Street don't have on-site parking. They have remote parking. They come back to pick up their kids, to drop off groceries, and you know they need to park at least for a little while on the street. And that's what's really causing this irritation, in addition to driveways sometimes being blocked. And of course, we're, you know, as is obvious, we're right on the Boston Brookline line, and that creates this situation. No, streets are closer to Fenway, the LMA, and the plethora of construction sites. In any case, I think there are a number of solutions here. Some are easy, some are hard, some will be more effective, some will only partially address the problem. It would be good if there were more 2-hour parking signs between the Boston line and 58 Monmouth Street, because there's a large stretch there, which is a very popular place for people to park with no signs. Now, maybe they see the sign when they drive into Brookline and ignore it anyway, but at the very least, there should be another sign or two added there. Enforcement has stepped up lately. It's been a little bit more noticeable, but I think comment was that's not sustainable. We've had waves of enforcement over the years. Resources are limited, and it's hard to guarantee that every car gets ticketed. On the fine situation, the third potential solution here, it's not just a matter of the fines are lower than in Boston. They're consistently lower than what it would cost to park in a garage or a parking lot in the Fenway area. I did a quick online search and I found that, $45 a day was the going rate. And Deputy Superintendent Murphy pointed out in an email to the neighborhood, it's just a cost of doing business for the people who are getting repeatedly $30 tickets. It's cheaper than paying for parking. And it's very hard to find on-street parking in the Fenway neighborhood, and the garage and parking lot rates are much higher than $30. So even if you get a ticket every time for violating the 2-hour limit, which probably isn't happening, it's worth it to pay that $30. So I'm not sure what the ideal ticket rate fine would be, but certainly if we're looking at a $50 legislative limit,
I was gonna ask
it's
you,
even higher than
What
that.
is the,
MGL, I know caps these.
Well, depending on what violation you're talking about, there's not a general law about parking in greater than 2 hours. It's designated as like overtime normally. And so I know that $50 is what it is in Somerville, but off the top of my head, I don't know what Mass General Law says is it, but we're not making any recommendations tonight for what those numbers would be, but definitely bring them more in line with our other communities and something that would incentivize people to not disobey the 2-hour parking is definitely needed.
And can we just ask a question? I don't know legally, are you allowed to change the fines for a certain street or streets and not townwide? Can you change the overtime rate?
Pretty sure it has to
Our
be
streets?
townwide.
I mean, the Red Sox parking is.
Yeah,
specific.
The fine amount for the ticket.
Yeah, we could change the Red Sox amount, but we could not, I do not believe we could set a fine just for a street. It would have to be townwide, and that would go to the select board after our recommendation.
That's why I asked about the tow zone, because that's something
We could do a tow zone, but sign it as such.
I will circle back to the tow zone because we had a problem a couple of decades ago with people violating the overnight parking ban. And there were lots of cars parked on Monmouth Street and Monmouth Court. And at that point, it was designated a tow zone for anyone parked between 2 a.m. and 6 a.m. At least that's the way the signs read. I think technically it's if they park for more than an hour. I'm not sure if anyone has ever been towed for violating the overnight parking ban. But putting up the signs, which you can see on both Monmouth Street and Monmouth Court, that it's a tow-away zone, 2 a.m., 6 a.m., seems to have had the desired effect because we no longer have all the cars parked overnight. I think people just spilled over from Boston and they parked on our streets, and we did have that very local tow-away zone there. I don't know whether that's the answer for the 2-hour limit, but there is that precedent. Now, there is the question of having an 8 to 10 a.m. parking ban or 8 to 11 a.m. And if you walk around the neighborhood beyond Monmouth Street and Monmouth Court, I think almost every other street in Cottage Farm and the Longwood neighborhood has that restriction, which is probably forcing the all-day parking over to Monmouth Street and Monmouth Court. But the neighbors are divided on this question. And they don't want to they want to retain the right to park in front of their own houses, even briefly, between 8 and 10 a.m. when they're taking kids to school or coming back, having dropped them off. And so there's no clear consensus on doing that unless there's a provision that allows residents to park during those hours, which anyone else would not be able to park. And there's some interest in a resident-only parking permit system, but I know that's not usually done by this transportation board for Brookline, but certainly people have raised that idea, as an option to try to enable residents to park, but limit the other parking.
I would advocate that too. I would advocate for resident stickers that will only avoid the 8 to 10 AM ban. Because
Kathleen, can you just identify yourself?
I'm sorry, I'm Kathleen Cavell. I'm a town meeting member along with John for precinct 1, and I have been since before any of you were born.
Thank you.
So, and before that, I was the town's lawyer, so, or a lawyer for the. But I think it's a grand idea, and Sean's letter was the first place I saw it. To have resident permits, not in general, but just to avoid the 8, since that seems to be controversial. The 8 to 10 AM ban for our streets. Although other people seem to live with it and deal with it in the neighborhood, but might that be a way of compromising here and seeing to it that people can't leave their car at 6:30 in the morning and come back at 4?
So, I came specifically to lobby for, and lobby the neighbors for, 8 to 10. Because an 8 to 10, restriction means that a police officer or a traffic enforcement officer can come by at any point and ticket everybody on the street. And it's very effective. It's very effective in the street that I live on. I live in fear of having to park on the street and across my own house. With regard to allowing residents to park from 8 to 10, when we first started putting these things in place, and I'm almost as old as you are.
I think you might even be older. But
I think
we
I'm
won't go
old.
into it.
I think I'm
Not as wise, good.
But I was on the transportation board for a dozen years. One of the things that the police department asked was that we not layer on too many conditions to make it difficult for an officer to figure out who should get a ticket and who shouldn't.
Well, a sticker is a sticker.
A sticker is a sticker, but there are also stickers all over town that give me and lots of other people a chance to park in front of their homes for, for 2 hours, for more than 2 hours without subjecting us to the 2-hour limit. I'm just telling you what the police, so
Okay.
whether it's rational or not, I leave that to somebody else to figure out. But, that was their advice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I own that.
Questions, comments?
We have one person in the chat who asked to speak.
Great, let's hear from them, please.
Doug, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Thank you very much for bringing this issue up. And thank you for your thoughts on it. I'm actually in favor of the 8 to 10 o'clock ban. I know others who are dropping kids off have different thoughts on it, but I think it would go a long way to getting the traffic parking issue under control. I think the people that are parking here, I was told by one of the guys who parks there that they are allowed to park at Children's for $45 a day. It's cheaper to park on our street. And one guy has a white van, pickup truck, and he has a handicap sticker that he puts on his rear view mirror in his truck. It had a picture of an older woman. He's a young, robust male. He's putting white tape over the picture on the handicap placard. I've talked to the parking person. She says she knows he's not handicapped, but there's nothing that she can do about it. But there is just such flagrant breaking of the law with these people parking on the street, and the enforcement is just, and I appreciate the enforcement, but it is like Sean indicated, if they get one ticket every other day, that's great, but usually they get no tickets. And by noon, you can look at the whole block and there's no tickets in all these cars. So any help you can give us in getting this under control, it would be greatly appreciated, because there's a new project slated at 101 Monmouth Street, right across from it. Again, it's in Boston, but it's right on the line. And that's going to, bring another flood of people parking on the street, as is the parking at Fenway, as is all the parking for the construction on Beacon Street for the new restaurants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Doug. Appreciate you taking the time.
Uganma, I'll provide the last name, just agreed about the little downside to the parking ticket because of the cost. And then the last raised hand is Elizabeth Tate, if you'd like to unmute and speak. Hello?
Yes, I'm here. Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, hi, I'm here with my husband Jeff. We live at 74 Monmouth Street and I think we can attest that it's a major issue. It's always been an issue because of the Fenway Park games and the music shows at Fenway Park. We have a lot of people parking because it's convenient and it's much cheaper to park on our street than to park in Fenway. And then with this job over on Park Drive, the old Bed Bath and Beyond's construction site, we have probably at least 10 construction trucks parking at 7 a.m. and they're there until 3:30 in the afternoon. The issue is, I think, twofold for me. I think, you know, they don't care if they get tickets because it's cheaper, frankly, if they get a ticket than parking anywhere else in Boston. So they don't care if they get a ticket. So I would suggest we raise our ticket amounts, but if there's no one enforcing them, which is the bigger issue, the enforcement for the tickets is just not happening. You know, and so because it's not happening, you know, we've got cars, I have a driveway onto Monmouth Street. I've got 2 parking spots on either side of the driveway that are no parking. There's people parked there all day long. I can hardly get my car out. They're not getting ticketed and they're parked there for like 7 hours. So if it's not being enforced, it's all moot point. You could put 8 to 10, you can do all this kind of stuff, but if no one's gonna supervise it, it doesn't matter. So I would, you know, I think that's what we need. We need enforcement, I think, in the neighborhood.
And just before we close, this is Jeff Tate, Elizabeth's husband. I just want to echo what everyone else has said on the call and in person. The parking situation here has just got progressively worse over the years. I know Red Sox games have come up, but I wanted to emphasize that as well. Those have gotten to be worse and worse over the years. And then people park here, they go to the game, they come back from the game, they leave their nips, they leave their trash on the street, and then they go and we're left with their mess, and we had to deal with their parking for 3 or 4 hours. So we're kind of exhausted with all of it. So anything you could do to help would be greatly appreciated.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Elizabeth. Appreciate you taking the time.
Nicole,
what are we doing, Sam?
Sorry, Nicole, Nicole, would you like to?
Yes, I'll be very brief.
Nicole, it's a little hard to hear you. Are you speaking directly into the microphone?
Great.
Nicole, are you there?
Is that better?
That is a million times better. Thank you.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Sorry about that. As I mentioned, I'm a resident of Monmouth Street, and I won't reiterate the issues that you've heard my neighbors speak of as it relates to parking. I think, as Elizabeth mentioned, the key is just enforcement and higher tickets. We have seen, since we brought this issue to the town, an increase in the enforcement, and that's been much appreciated. I would like to say for an 8 to 10 a.m. parking ban, I'm actually opposed to that. I think it would make it very challenging for anyone servicing the houses on the street, whether it's a plumber, an electrician, childcare, you name it. Unlike some of the other neighborhoods in this area, there's really not many other places for them to park because there's really no parking on Beacon. As you mentioned, Longwood Mall has an 8 to 10 a.m. ban. So I'm thinking that would actually make it worse for the neighbors. So I know we may be divided on that, but I just wanted to put my thoughts out there.
Thank you very much.
And Terry Keene, and maybe do last call.
Yeah. Yeah, hi, my name is Terry Keene. I'm 78 Monmouth Street, and I just want to thank everyone, especially Kathleen and Sean, for bringing this up so well. today and explaining the problems also to the traffic transportation group. The situation, I've lived here for 34 years, and the situation is, as Kathleen characterized it, Sean characterized it, never been this bad. And we do need help from the town to control this. We can't do anything. It is the construction people. I suspect it'll be some more of the restaurants going on. But we have to come to some agreement about what we're going to do. But I think the perfect solution is probably going to escape us. And I just want to make sure that we have solutions in place soon, because when this new construction of an apartment building, which we opposed many months ago, which was approved by the town, when that starts, it's going to be impossible to really function here very well. So thanks to everybody for representing our community pretty well. And we look forward to coming up with solutions in very real time to make sure that this doesn't continue. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you taking the time, Terry. Okay, last call for online comments.
Need attendees. I think 6 out of 8 have gone, so we are good.
Okay, we'll close down the public comment section for online at this point. So we're not going to take any action tonight. We're just here to receive the information. Dan?
So I want to refresh your memories for the discussion about the parking permits we have in town.
Please.
So a lot of the streets have permit parking 8 to 10. And that allows tradesmen, commercial heat tech permits, and the resident permit holders to park in that street. So if they were to do 8 to 10 permit parking, there would be options for residents that got the resident hang tag. That allows residents that live on that street to get a sticker to park in their car longer than 2 hours during the day, including that permit parking time. For tradesmen, they could get a tradesman permit at town hall. There is some stipulation in the contracts. They have to come in and show that there's either a building permit or a contract proving that they're doing work at the house, and then it's $5 per day for that tradesman to get a permit, but that would allow them to park during 8 to 10 with that tradesman permit. And then there are already commercial hang tags signed for Monmouth. So that is one reason why you wouldn't want to do blanket 8 to 10 restriction. You'd want to allow permit parking 8 to 10 for the hang tag users that are there.
May I ask how many commercial parking permits are being issued for Monmouth these days? So I know the number was capped at one point, so because of the general parking problem.
Don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but I wanted to say it's like between 8 and 10 commercial hang tags. And you can tell those cars that have the blue hang tag there.
Who qualifies for those?
The businesses in the St. Mary's area can apply for a commercial hang tag. It's I think $600 a year. It lets them park on the assigned residential side streets from 8 AM to 8 PM. And that where staff is capped at assigning up to 40% of the street. So we can't go over, we can't issue more than 40% of the available parking to commercial heat tags. That's the.
Okay. So, speaking just for myself, I think an 8 to 10 prohibition would work very well here. I live on a street that has an 8 to 10 prohibition. Has the entire time I've lived here for 20 years, it's been that way. You find ways to live with it and work around it. And you're absolutely right. You live in fear of the person coming to give you a ticket between 8 and 10. But we all live with it and it works pretty well. And it's designed to keep folks from parking there and jumping on the T.
It's too bad people are no longer online, because that's a message that I think our neighbors need to hear.
Yeah.
But I'm confused because we keep hearing over and over again that it's still cheaper to get the ticket.
Yeah, well, we have to also talk about the fines. So, I was looking at Mass General Law and I think 50 is the limit. I think that we need to have our discussion about this. People aren't gonna necessarily like it, but we should at very least, in my opinion, consider going up to 40 to parity with Boston, and then if not, 45 to 50 at some point. But I think we should definitely look at that, especially given that for the Red Sox parking as well. I think it's $22.50 now, and the fine is $25. So
The fine is $30 because it's not for an unpaid meter.
It's also like a weird equity thing. Like, why are Somerville looks great. They should all be the crosswalks and sidewalks are $25 as opposed to these other violations, or it just makes sense for them all to be the same level. I don't know if there's any rationale for why one would be higher than the other.
No rationale.
Yeah.
It just sounds like in the historically or pre-2014, the only conversation I was able to have was with a sergeant or from, his name's Neil, over in Brookline Police, and he said that previously pre-2014, or 2014 was when we put in a bus fine and a bike lane fine, which had never existed. And previously to that, it's unknown when the fees were last updated before 2014, and it sounded like Todd had just worked to put together numbers, brought it to the board, we voted on it, goes to the select board, and then we just kind of let traffic enforcement know what the updated numbers are.
It was sometime around 2005, 2006. And.
Glad you're here.
Pardon me?
I'm glad you're here.
Thank you.
History,
You didn't
well,
leave.
So I sat in your seat then, so,
Yes.
I do remember it, yeah.
I might have been here then.
No, I don't think you were on board yet.
It looks like Boston has the highest in most of the categories, except for a few. My preference is for the highest of all of our neighbors in each category.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
problem with that, when there's nowhere to go, we have to get home rule petitions to increase. Anyway, yes.
And then along the lines of parking, like my preference is if there's high demand for this public space, then that we should have a pricing scheme.
Yeah.
Like a parking meter,
Yeah.
to help control the parking levels.
I would say that there are few locations in town so close to our neighbors in Boston that do not have meters, like just thinking about all of our orders. Commercial though, I know this is just like the cusp of.
So the good news is we have lots of tools in our proverbial tool belts, so we can try things and come back, and I know that you will let us know how it's working, and if we do this, we can start with the 8 to 10, and we can ramp up if we have to, or if that's sufficient, we can leave it at that.
And are you suggesting 8 to 10 except permit, allowing permits or not?
Yes,
allowing permits?
yeah, I think you'd have to allow them. And again, we have those where I live, they're actually issued by the high school, which makes no sense, but,
Oh,
And it
yeah, you've
works.
got teacher permits that,
we have teacher permits as well, we also have residential permits.
Right.
For the 8 to 10.
yeah, ages ago, the select board agreed to issue a certain block in order to control teacher parking.
It's odd. But. Yeah, so I think what we should do is, put this on a future agenda. We'll go through our process, we'll have the public hearing. And, I think we'll start with an 8 to 10 with some sort of a permit program and hear what the neighborhood has to say, and then implement that probably this fall, hopefully, give it a chance to work, and then we'd like to hear from you folks sort of next winter, next spring, see how it's working.
And I see these as two separate things. Is
Yeah.
that they would?
Oh, sorry, and for the fines, I think we should take action on the fines sooner than later. I'd like to take that up. June, July,
Sure.
we gotta talk to the select board, obviously.
Some more data on the garages in the area, that's like the real argument, right? It's like we should at least be at the ticketing at the rate of the garage.
I agree.
So that would be helpful.
I don't know how much this is gonna play into your discussions with the garage rates and ticketing, but there is a study with Coolidge Corner parking that in that study, they're gonna be making recommendations on policies that the town can take to help manage parking in the Coolidge Corner area.
What does that do?
It's not gonna be done until the end of this calendar year.
Yeah.
It's not gonna be final, this.
I mean, MAPC has some good work on this region as well. Sorry about your question.
No, I was gonna say, with regard to the level that you set, I know my colleague Paul Warren, who lives on Elm Street, and I are 2 votes for high fines, and I'm pretty sure that we could find at least 30. So I would encourage you to go for broke.
I can't wait for that home rule petition to raise fine rates in Brookline. getting funds, that would be great.
Oh, you're gonna get a bunch of towns together. That's never gonna go through for one community.
But we'll burn that bridge weekend.
Yeah.
Okay, you good? Feel been heard and we heard you.
Thank you.
When is this likely to come back to the board?
Probably July or September
For the permit.
for the permit. We want to do the fines sooner than later. So the fines will do June or July. 10 to 8, 8 to 10, depending on what else we have on the agenda. Probably, I think September's a good bet. But if we can do it in July, we can get it implemented for school comes back in September. We can try to do that.
The neighborhood would love it because the problem is there right now.
So we'll try to do it in July. That'll, there's a 21-day cooling off period here with that. We can get it implemented in September. We'll try to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, we did item 12 earlier. Is there any other new business that anybody wants to bring up?
I have a question
Yes.
that's been asked of me,
Please.
which is, and I don't remember basically like what's happening with the busing plan to the middle school for peers to get over to, over Fisher Hill.
Yeah,
And does that come in front of us?
no, it's a school issue.
So they don't have to get any permission?
And
That I know of.
care workers.
I talked with the principal today, on the old school issue. But we didn't talk about the street. I'll ask where it is. But I know that there's been all sorts of meetings with parents and everything else. My daughter goes to Pierce.
Yeah,
So-
I just know that there's definitely neighbors over there who are sort of preparing to, or maybe have already started using.
Well, busing kids to school.
Well, about the management plan, wanting to know where buses are turning around and. All right.
Yeah, we'll have to ask the school. I don't know. We'll have to ask. I'll have to ask the school. I don't think that school buses are ever appeared.
Designated something.
Stop sign out?
I haven't seen the final request, but I think their plan for Newbury is they're gonna have, bus pickup somewhere near your school. And then that takes some students, Fisher Hill.
Okay, any other new business? Not, is there a motion to adjourn?
Are we, next time? Are you in this here again?
What do people think?
Other than not being able to get snacks anytime I want, I'm okay with it.
Or gavel?
We find a gavel. We find a gavel.
Maybe we'll try this again in September, but we'll do June and July, hybrid, virtual. Does that sound good? We'll try to be back here for September.
Yeah,
Does that sound
I
right?
say we don't do it in the winter.
Absolutely. I agree.
That's my main.
I agree. Motion to adjourn?
Motion.
Without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you. If I had a gavel, Dan Martin, I'd bang it, but